We are starting session now. Afghanistan transit opportunities. We are specifically concentrating on railways, roads, rivers, and containers. Because for the pipelines, we will concentrate tomorrow on the Chatham House rule. This session is still open for press. That's why you can refer after on the results. Tomorrow's session about TAPI pipeline, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India will be under Chatham House rule. No reference, no press, just expert roundtable, brainstorming discussion. I think we have some new delegates came, but I will introduce again our speakers. Minister of Economy of Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, Mr. Mustafa Mastoor. Then we have Sham in the previous administration of the Minister, Special Envoy and Senior Advisor to the President of Afghanistan. Then we have Rezayee from the Parliament of Afghanistan. We have Badat, ex-President of FIATA, International Foreign Organization, worldwide. We have Vladimir Kotenev, who is our new speaker for today. He's a former ambassador of Russia to Germany, and he's a big specialist for the Central Asia and the Greater Caspian region. And we have Mr. Ziarmal, who is the first deputy chairman of the International Chamber of Commerce in Afghanistan, and Mr. Khenjani, who is the founder of Democratic Think Tank Society in Afghanistan in Kabul. Okay, Afghanistan is geographically, strategically important and strategically located because it's a potential route from the Central Asia to the south, to the Gulf. It's actually in the middle between the Central Asia and East Asia, like it was told. That's why, besides general economic development, we would like to know what are the transit opportunities in Afghanistan. And here we have great experts. And but as tradition, I am giving the floor to Minister Mastoor to share his views.
Thank you very much, Murat. After you have fed us with very heavy lunch, I'm not sure if we overfed you with Afghanistan information. We will be in another session as well, so bear with us. This topic is another topic very close to our hearts in Afghanistan. The transit playing a role as a transit country, as Murat was saying, a God-gifted location that we have among great neighbors that we have from East China. And east and south to Pakistan, then in west Iran, and in the north Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. So far, as Murat said, so far we are landlocked, so we don't have access to sea yet. If we had access to sea in the near future, then we will also talk about rivers, shipping, transport, and transit as well. At this moment, as in the previous session, some of the presenters or panelists were also talking, the transit issue in the region between neighbors, usually it's good, but when it goes beyond the neighbor, that always has its own challenges. Normally, goods, energy, and data or those things which we are normally trading with each other or transiting. But in Afghanistan, but another thing which I wish it was part of the session, and I would like to talk a little bit about, that is the air transporter as well. That is something that our region is not good at, or so far that's not that much developed. Our vision in the Afghan government is to act as a land bridge in the region, and I hope that the peace and stability to bring or to enable us to act as really as a land bridge for this great region. Also in our vision and ambition, there is strong political will which is in the country. It helps us for the regional connectivity that is part of the top agenda of the current government since 2014. So far, we have strong support by our partners, whether they are donors, whether they are international financial institutions. They are really helping us in this regard. In the meantime, great economic benefit of this topic is not limited to Afghanistan, but mainly on the region, is our top priority. It can bring great investment, particularly when we are talking about the country-to-country, regional, and also public-to-private partnerships. Again, as we were talking in the first session, great opportunities are there, and we need to fully utilize. And currently, a number of regional setups are there, but due to some political differences between some countries, we've not been able to fully utilize them. Now coming particularly on roads, as earlier Mr. Power was saying, in Afghanistan and also in Pakistan, both countries, they are good in driving trucks, but whether to have it as end-to-end logistics, to turn it to that one, whether we are good or whether there are possibilities to improve it, yes, there are lots of room for improvement. In the last 20 years, we really improved the road network in Afghanistan. Now we have first time a ring road, which earlier it was not existing, connecting to our neighbors, connecting inside to our provinces. They are there, but still many other areas to further look at. At this moment, we're working on two north-south corridors, corridor number 1, corridor number 2. Number 1 is already in the middle, and it links the Central Asian countries to Pakistan at least, and then also backward. And then east-west corridor, that one is at this moment just in the initial stages. The donors that are helping us in this area, they are bilateral donors, including USAID, US government, Germany, Italy, and also some multilateral agencies or international financial institutions such as World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Islamic Development Bank, and some certain funds, including Saudi Fund and others. As I mentioned earlier, we have a long way to go so that we perfectly act as a transit country, as a land bridge for the region. I think the demand in the Central Asia and the demand in South Asia is really huge, and we hope that we could help in that regard. Also, other initiatives around us or in the region, they are also need to be fully utilized. The Belt and Road is another thing which we need to work on. So far, some neighboring countries also helping in this particular sector. The Iran government, India, in some cases Pakistan, they are helping us, but we encourage other neighbors also in order to fully utilize this opportunity. They could also come and participate in building the Afghanistan road sector so that we all could utilize it. Now coming to railway, definitely Afghanistan is a missing part. Until very lately, maybe 2007 and 8, we didn't have any, even 1 kilometer of railway. I was the first negotiator for the first railway connection with Uzbekistan. through Asian Development Bank. That is the first 75 kilometers that we built. But one good thing with that was this was the only or the first project in Afghanistan that finished ahead of time. Many other projects in Afghanistan, or maybe in other countries also, they take time. Now we have some small pieces linking us with Turkmenistan in two sections, one with Iran, but we are looking forward to be connected with other neighbors as well. One main problems that we have that we're between three different standards or gauges. The South Asian gauge, which are the former British railway gauge, is Pakistan, India, and others. And then Central Asian countries, they are having the Soviet gauge. That's another one. And then Iran and China, in the east of Afghanistan and the west of Afghanistan, they are using mainly the European gauge. So for us, it was a big challenge which one to choose, or we develop our own gauge. A fourth one. But anyway, I'm sure that now technology helps in this regard. We would like to be connected with every neighbor with their own gauge, but then develop the railway with the standard gauge of European gauge that China and Iran has it. We have a plan of 4,800 kilometers of rail to be developed. The 3,300 kilometers feasibility study already done. 175 kilometers at this moment under construction. And the rest of the areas still needs to be worked at. So we are much behind than our neighbors, and also donors who are helping us in this regard is the Asian Development Bank, World Bank, Iran, Italy, particularly on these issues. Coming a little bit on the air transport, also not only for transit, but also that if we could have it for passengers and goods, maybe for goods that much may not be feasible. However, we already developed air corridor transportation for goods beyond our neighbors, which is going well. But at least in this sector or in this part of the world, it is not well developed. I'm sure that all countries that we are representing here, on the air transportation, much needs to be done. Though with our neighbors, as I said, road transport might be the cheapest, but if you look to countries like Europe, you see that how much their transport is developed and how much the connections are there. So that our region so far is suffering from, and we can further develop that one. So anyway, but let's see how well we could copy the examples of other countries, including other regions, including Europe, and so we could go not only with the transit with one country and beyond, but between the regions. So, and I'm sure that it will help a lot with other initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I will just have one comment because you mentioned the BRI projects. There is one new opportunity which materialized middle of last year. It was signed a memorandum of understanding for strategic cooperation between Switzerland and China for Belt and Road projects and the Belt and Road markets. That's why it's an opportunity now to channel Chinese investments and technology through Switzerland under Swiss management, Swiss law to the third markets, BRI markets, in particular for the Greater Caspian region and to Afghanistan. Maybe this is the opportunity to develop something. Okay, now
Just one thing I may add. Similar that I mentioned about railway, our different standards in the other areas as well also limit us in the even on the container freights and also other goods. At least the example of lapis lazuli corridor, which we started December 2018, and I was just discussing with a friend. Since December 2018, there was only 2 convoys which left Afghanistan and reached Turkey. So we need to do a lot in terms of standardization, in terms of permits, visas, so that we could get to this objective. However, there was one comment in the previous session. It does not happen with all goods. There are some goods which are reaching the region and beyond very easily. And unfortunate, that's very unfortunate, I'm talking about drugs. In that one, we see that there are not much problems, but in the formal goods, it's always a problem, and we have to come up with those challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. A possible solution in container transportation, because there is one initiative which we announced 1 year ago as a Caspian container company to connect the Greater Caspian region by container transportation with a big vault. Maybe this is the opportunity also for this corridor. Okay, thank you. And now I'm passing the floor to Mr. Badat, because he is a great expert in logistics, and here we are talking exactly about logistics. And although he was heading the FIATA, International Forwarding Association, he is originally from Pakistan, and he knows very well the region and also the difficulties and potential of the transit corridors, because Pakistan is the main transit country for Afghanistan, geographically. Please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Murat. Mr. Murat, thank you. You're very generous in your commentary. So I don't know how much value I can add, but of course, would like to say that for those of you who have joined in now and were not here in the morning, I would like to tell you that I represent FIATA. FIATA is the Global Federation of Logistics Associations. It's the world's largest organization in logistics and transportation. And we handle policy, we engage on a global level on policy making, connectivity. And I think, especially in conflict zones, this is very imperative that, that logistics and transportation is established well, because it's, I think, as I said before, a precursor for prosperity and for trade to move. Over here, I'll also take the liberty of saying that, you know, when you move from a conflict zone into a more settled area, there is a time lag, and I think we are living in that time lag, and it depends how long we take to establish these transport corridors and all. And it could be 5 years, it could be 25 years. So it depends on the players and the policymakers, which is the government, the private sector, NGO organizations which promote trade and logistics. It's for them how fast they can interact. In the last few years, I think we have heard a lot about corridors. Corridors was a terminology which didn't exist before. So I'll tell for this forum that today in this region, the Caspian region, especially Afghanistan, we are in the stage of corridor diplomacy, if that's a terminology you would like to accept. So we are in that area. So Excellency, you're here, you call the shots in Afghanistan. I think you understand very well where this diplomacy is and what we need to do. The private sector as well as the government need to work together to take this forward. And it's very imperative that they work together to take this forward. We as a global organization see this area as one of the new frontiers, or one of the last frontiers, where connectivity can play a fundamental role in the well-being and the promotion of trade, and the well-being of people, and prosperity in the region. So in this particular area, we are constrained by geography. The hill terrains, the mountains don't allow us free flow of infrastructure. So it is twice as difficult to do it. As my colleague, Excellency Ministers had just mentioned, the railway connectivity is not there with South Asia, with Pakistan, it's because of this reason. But I think the way things are moving now and what the world is seeing in BRI, One Belt, One Road initiative, which is a phenomenal initiative. Devoid of, I put aside the politics of it, the infrastructure itself, the project itself is very large. And talking about railways, in Pakistan, the jewel in the crown of the BRI is the CPAC. CPAC is the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. That's a jewel in the crown of the BRI. And the jewel in the crown of CPAC is the railway connection, which is $7.3 billion project, which is the railway line which connects from the ports in the south to the border of Afghanistan. And that's called the ML1 project. And ML1 project is the upgradation of the current railway connection and dualization of the. The dualization will allow the movement of freight seamlessly. So if we can have a multimodal transport arrangement, that it goes by railway from the port till the Khyber Pass and moves on by truck and then again gets on to piggybacks into railway network within Afghanistan from Jalalabad or before that, that's one option. Second option is that you bring in from, let's say from Mari or from Turkmenistan into Herat and then south into Kandahar and then from Kandahar you cross over into Chaman and come down to Badat. So these are the options which are there. Some of these projects are beyond the drawing board stage. Some of them already moved. There is a power line project which is already in advanced stages. And you'll hear more about that today or tomorrow perhaps, yeah? Tomorrow, and you'll hear about that. That's a very profound project and it's a very important project to create the basis of that routing, because if at any point there is security required, that can be a security corridor or a secured corridor also. But I think the way things are moving, you may not need to have security as such a big detrimental factor to the whole thing going forward. So the role of security may be minimized also. So I think these are the options that, some of the options in the area that we have to look. Then there is the trucking industry. Again, trucking itself, and so Minister, you quoted me on this, but I always said that the region in the north of Pakistan and Afghanistan, people over there have lived for centuries in a very challenging environment, climate, as well as facilities and everything. So those people are very hardy, and they're very good at driving a truck or whatever. I don't know how they do it, but they're very good at it. And most of the transport, even in Pakistan, a country of 200 million people, is somehow controlled by them. So trucking is an industry, I think, which can really grow in this area. And as I said, BRI and other corridors allow the opportunity for connectivity, greater connectivity in this region. So we would, of course, like to see more attention given to this area, more attention to transport, logistics in the area, and I think it's all doable. And as I said, some of the projects are beyond the drawing board. So if we pursue it, I'm sure we will see good results. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Badat. Now I'm giving the microphone to Ambassador Vladimir Kotenev, former Russian ambassador to Germany and before that to Switzerland. We would like also to hear the view from the north. And he's the expert also in the region. That's why I think could be very interesting. Please.
Thank you very much. I'm new on this panel, and I would like first to thank Murat Seitnepesov and his team for an excellent organization of this forum. It's a wonderful, very important platform parallel to the World Economic Forum. And really from the point of view from the very important Caspian power, Russia, maybe I would like to add just first to that what was said in the morning panel. The peace and stability, first of all, in Afghanistan, national peace, appeasement, national reconciliation is very, very important for Russia and for the whole region, maybe for the whole world. And this is the most important factor for the development of our bilateral or regional economic relations, also transit, transportation relation, and so on. Maybe I may make a comparison between Afghanistan and Switzerland in Europe as geographically and geopolitically country, very important, lying directly in the middle of this subcontinent. Switzerland is also landlocked somehow, but it's the most important logistic and transit point, transit land in the Western and Middle Europe. Second, maybe idea is this regional security. I think Afghanistan can reach it together with neighbors, and Russia is a member of the Security Council of the UN and member of very important regional international organizations like Shanghai Cooperation Organization and first of all Eurasian Economic Union and BRICS. And I think the chances of Afghanistan are lying also in the closer cooperation in these regional organizations, and we can, for example, combine our efforts, combine our plans, projects with our Chinese neighbors and use this very important Chinese initiative, OBOR, One Belt, One Road, with our projects, first of all, in things of infrastructure, transit, and so on. It means, for example, railways. Chinese have huge plans in Eurasia in generally, and I hope especially in Afghanistan, so we can just combine our cooperation and efforts and investments. Maybe one point more, we're talking about transition and transportation corridors. Russia has got own very rich experience in building in a very hard conditions in Siberia and so on of railways. So maybe we can use this experience also not only in Afghanistan but in the whole greater Caspian region. We offer very innovative products. For example, I personally I make marketing in abroad and especially in Western Europe, of Russian cables for electrified railroads. It could be very interesting for Afghanistan and for Pakistan, for example. And as we talk about corridors, I would say since 20 years we talk in Russia about other corridors, but maybe the same, north-south, from the Baltic Sea, from polar seas to the Caspian Sea and further to Iran, to Afghanistan, and about the east-west corridor. Both roads, highways, and railways. And I think, maybe you can correct me as a great specialist, I think very important is here the combination of road and railway. Multi, absolutely. So that's why I think we can combine also all these projects and profit from all these plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Now I would like to give the floor to Sham, former minister, ambassador, and Special Envoy and Senior Advisor to the President of Afghanistan.
Thank you, Murat. As my colleague, Minister Mastoor said, you fed us such a big lunch and big palau, whether we are ready to, feed you back in the same way, but one can try. The issue of the transit, it is so crucial for countries like landlocked, which is Afghanistan is one of them. For us, the issue was so important that Afghanistan was the first country in 1964 to present a UN resolution on the transit issues and creation of the landlocked category itself, and that was passed on. So within that context, we are pursuing it all along, and of course, with success and with ups and downs and so on. There was a saying that when Wall Street sneezes, the price of spinach goes higher in Kandahar. There's the expression. But I used to say, when Pakistan sneezes, the price of sugar goes all the way up, and Afghan drink tea without the sugar. So this is the role between a transit country and a landlocked country. One has to be, realistically speaking, Pakistan is the most efficient way for Afghanistan to have a trade. Because at the end of the day, it's the cost of goods. And like, for example, Mr. Ziarmal who's here, and he will tell us, how much you can gain in the markets and so on. So it's very important to have the lower cost, and that, of course, comes from a lower cost of the thing. So one way is to find all ways and means at the policy level, at the intergovernmental level, and integration level, regional cooperation level, everything which is done, we should do that. And we have done it. In matter of fact, as Minister Mastoor said, on the railroads, we talked about it all these years with all the recipient governments and so on. We have been helped a lot, and we put everything in order, but now one has to go a little further to make it happen, the reality part. The road, Afghanistan has lived all its living life on the road, on the trucks and so on, coming from Karachi through all the routes and so on. So we will continue to do so. You touched upon on the air corridor. In matter of fact, there was a proposal way back in 1960s where they wanted to create a South Asian air link, which at least connected 4 or 5 Asian landlocked countries, namely Bhutan, Nepal, for example, Afghanistan, and so on. Well, at that time, the aircraft and everything was so expensive that you could not afford it. But today, things have changed very rapidly. The easy jet from Geneva to Vienna can take you for $20. So it's that much change has occurred. So one can think about that part. While I was there, I also thought that Afghanistan should have a shipping line. And people look at you, Afghanistan, as a landlocked country, a shipping line. We have not explored it. I think we must do that at some point. The northern part of the Amu River, which connects 4 countries.
Yes.
Amu Darya, yes. Which is basically, we can solve maybe not big problems, but at least some problems with the small shipping interconnectivity and so on. I like to say what Babar just said, corridor diplomacy. I think we should take this corridor diplomacy a step ahead. And that step ahead is to corridor diplomacy, I wouldn't say diplomacy as it is, integration. And build up on the regional cooperation. Because at the end of the day, Turkmenistan is a landlocked country, Uzbekistan is a landlocked country, and so does all the Central Asian countries. We got to have our minds together at some point, come up with some proper ideas to say what next and how we can cooperate. This is one thing I think we ought to be doing in the coming years, decades, and so on. More important, we must also introduce, which I have seen with my own eyes, the software human diplomacy, which means I was at the years back at the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, where the trucks, hundreds and thousands of trucks are coming and going back and forth. Very simple. There's one person who's controlling that border point. He can say no. If he says no, and that's no. No matter how far you want to go, you can easily say it's no. But at the end of the day, I sat down with some people, I said, what will make him to say yes? For example, Because at the end of the day, it's him who's making life easier for the other side, or he's making life difficult for himself. So basically, that human diplomacy is through software arrangements. So human diplomacy, context, connectivity, and so on. That is another area I think we ought to be little by little looking for it in the transit areas and so on. Among many other such initiatives are there. But more important thing is also, I think we have to be going through a lot of this global international instruments which exist. We should be taking advantage of it. And also I must say that we must also ask our donor countries, in particular, as an Afghan I'm saying, during the past years, a lot of goods came from Europe and the United States via Riga point, by using all the old Soviet railway network and all the way to Afghan border and so on, which is bravo. It was very efficient, very fast, and so on. But my suggestion was, I said, you can do so because of the efficiency and so on, but please build next thing to us too, so that we could take advantage, and our sort of, entrepreneurs, the transitors, and they should learn, and so on. So within that context, we have to be a little bit open-minded and see how we can introduce, and we should be very close to our neighbors, for example, our landlocked countries, and the Russia itself, who have been a major contributor to Afghanistan since years, and they have the same interest. Of course, the differences were there, but now, as in when the world is going further, the differences are narrowing it up. So we hope we'll continue with this path as well. I leave you to that, but then we'll continue discussion. Thank you, Murat.
Thank you. Thank you, Sham. Now, view from the Parliament of Afghanistan. Please, Rezayee, floor is yours.
Again, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thanks for audience and panelists. We have a lot of achievement in transit in Afghanistan. If we go back back of 2001, we had a lot of problems. The only way we were transport goods was Karachi border. That was the only way we had. But since Afghanistan had a political issue with Pakistan, anytime, so I'm so sorry, Pakistan was able to close the border on us, and thousands of containers was stacking in the border. And the traders were facing a lot of problems, paying a lot of damages. Since I was doing transportation trade in Afghanistan, we were known that how the traders in Afghanistan are hurting from this problems. Fortunately, the Afghanistan government looked for some other options that how we can resolve, not depend only on one way. We don't blame government, but it was some problem between the two countries, sometimes from Afghanistan side and sometimes from Pakistan side. We opened the Chabahar border, was another opportunity for Afghanistan to transport and connect Afghanistan with other part of the world. Lapis Lazuli corridor was another opportunity we opened it, fortunately for Afghanistan. And fortunately, we had a transit railway, a cargo railway came from China all the way to Afghanistan within 15 days. That was very good news for Afghanistan, that we connect we open another window that we can, and the air corridor was another window that the government opened, and a lot of fresh items, fresh fruit, were easily to transport to the Europe and Central Asia and to the Middle East countries. But still, Afghanistan has a lot of problems with the train transit. Fortunately, since Mr. Minister has mentioned the railway projects we started up, we are hoping that we will have about 5,000 kilometers of railways. until 2030, almost the visibility studies finished, and the railway law passed in Parliament. Fortunately, we have that on the ground, and the railway authority we have on the ground now. We have a lot of commitments. I hope, inshallah, we will get this. Problems have been done, but one thing very important: Afghanistan demands on the transit and the transportation opportunity. Business in Afghanistan is a lot, and we have a lot of rooms to invest inside Afghanistan, and transit transportation from Afghanistan and to between the countries. There is a lot of opportunity also inside Afghanistan. I hope we will get to the point that one day Afghanistan should be the central hub in the Central Asia to be the major economic growth venue to depend on this. We are moving step by step, and hopefully we'll get there. Thank you very much.
No. Can I just say something? While the two countries have lived through challenging times, there have been some good stories also. And there was one such good story which was very interesting. There was an Afghan truck which came right inside Pakistan. Well, the traffic, then they were inside Pakistan, and it got hit. He broke something in the truck, and he couldn't take it back. So, as is traditional in our part of the world, the guy parked the truck on the road, and he put a chadar, the chadar we take. He put it on the front bumper of the truck. In half a day, every single truck passing from there put money inside that. The next day, because there's no insurance in our part of the world, the trucking industry doesn't have insurance. They put money in that. He was able to take it back, and he took the truck. 1 week later, he came back to the border. Every Pakistani truck coming over there, he was giving them free fruit to the drivers over there at the border. So this sample was taken back to our government. We wrote to the government and said, look, this is what the trucking industry is talking about. So this was when there was a strain and the traffic had stopped. So there were some good stories also at that time. Just to mention this. Thank you.
Just one short proposal. Maybe not corridor diplomacy, but crossroad diplomacy, addressing to the rich history of Asian countries.
Thank you. Without logistics or proper logistics, no trading, no commerce, no industry. Please, now International Chamber of Commerce, Vice President for Afghanistan, Mr. Zabihullah Ziarmal, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Murat. Distinguished guests, panelists, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good afternoon to everybody once again. I would like to start my points by just quoting one of the events which I was attending in Tashkent. And over there, we had a very interesting discussion. It was about these corridor railways and connectivity of the region. And the discussion was mainly on either Afghanistan is part of the Central Asia or the South Asia. So after a long 3 hours discussion, considering the historical ties of the countries, Afghanistan with the Central Asian countries and with the South Asian, the cultures, the trade ties and from the past, current, and in the future, where we go, we came to a conclusion that due to the many similarities which Afghanistan has both with the Central Asia, with the South Asia, and as well as with the Middle East. So Afghanistan is a connecting bridge located as a crossroads of Central Asia, South Asia, and the Middle East. For example, if you travel to the north of Afghanistan, border with Turkmenistan and border with Uzbekistan, I can guarantee that you can get the same taste of the Uzbek palau that we got it today here. And if we go to the west, we can have this Iranian taste of the food, which we white palau and kebabs and juja kebab and all of them. Same is the case to the east of Afghanistan, which is bordered with Pakistan. So taking this one into consideration, and this is a great opportunity for Afghanistan to be as a crossroad of the Central Asia, South Asia, and the Middle East, that connecting the Central Asia through Pakistan to the South Asia, and connecting the Central Asia through Iran with the Middle East. Although the United States government doesn't like Iran since long, and there are some sanctions and some issues, but still we have no more choice unless we have to do the trade through this region and to be connecting this region. The point is that why Afghanistan is very important in this region, because if you look at the Central Asia is one of the regions which has a lot of potentials of energy, power, and many more. For example, Turkmenistan being the third world's largest natural reserve natural gas country, and that gas is needed for the South Asia, which the market size is existing, where 1.6 billion population is there, and they need energy, they need power. For example, the TAPI project, which was initiated long time back, and then it came to the feasibility and to the groundworks, which has gone on now. And tomorrow is going to be a discussion specifically about the TAPI and the challenges which is confronting the TAPI in terms of the political aspects, the security aspects, the financing aspects that we'll be discussing more about that one. And projects like TAPI, projects like CASA 1000, which was transmitting 1,000 megawatt of electricity through Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and through Afghanistan to Pakistan, which has already been initiated and completed, that project. These projects and such projects creating a regional ties and regional connectivity and regional integration. And it gives so many causes for the countries in the region that they have to be paying a lot of attention for the peace and prosperity in Afghanistan, not to promote conflict and insurgency in the region. Without having such regional connectivity projects, we should not be expecting peace and stability in the short run and in the long run into Afghanistan and into the region. If you look at the Asia, so those 12 landlocked least developed countries, which is in the entire Asian continent. So 12 of them are just in this greater Caspian region. Nine of them are in this greater Caspian region, including Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, up to Mongolia and Armenia and over there. Yeah. And Afghanistan is, fortunately or unfortunately, one of those landlocked, mountainous, least developed countries in this region, which with significant importance for the region and for the globe. And connectivity, despite of being having such a significant importance in this region, still connectivity is a bigger challenge for Afghanistan, to be connected with the rest of these countries in the region and from this region to the other regions of the world. And that's why sometimes we are facing so many challenges that the panelists already discussed, the challenges that we are facing time to time in terms of the transit and transit of goods and commodities through Pakistan and through Iran due to the political issues of Iran with the world superpowers. Like, for example, in the past, we were totally dependent in terms of the trade through Pakistan, and we used to bring in a lot of commodities and goods through Karachi port to Afghanistan. And then since Pakistan has changed the legal frameworks and policies and created a lot of challenges for the Afghan commodities and cargoes, then we had no choice unless to shift our trend to Iran. And our volume of trade and imports from Iran, for example, last year it was more than $2.1 billion. And then due to the sanctions which has been imposed by the US government onto Iran, and we had to find another way, another better way of connectivity to be connected with the rest of the world. Then initiative of the Lapis Lazuli corridor was one of the initiatives that has decreased our ties and dependency on the Iran corridor with the Middle East. And finally, the Central Asia since 2 years is more open. In the past, we didn't have a lot of trade volumes with the Central Asia, but now that's another great opportunity. For example, I would like to mention one of my own personal story, which as a trader, as a businessman working in that region and working in Afghanistan, I have personally faced being also as a company which is supporting the US government military operations in Afghanistan, we used to supply commodities, oil, fuel, gas, and different items for their military operations on the ground. We had a contract and we had to bring in some commodities from US to Afghanistan in support of the US military operations. And we had sent a lot of containers through Karachi port to Afghanistan because that was the only choice we had. The containers were coming from US, from California. And then the Pakistan transit has got challenged, and at that time there was so many containers. I don't remember, probably a bunch of thousands of containers got stuck over there for more than 4 or 5 months. And personally, I myself, because it was a very sensitive goods and it was a very sensitive contract, I had to personally travel to Pakistan, to Islamabad, to Peshawar 3 times, but I came with no results. And we had more containers which was coming to the same way. Then in China, we have diverted and we have shifted to come to the Jebel Ali port and then to be sent to Afghanistan through the Islam Kala, which is obviously crossing the Iranian border. We planned that one, and by the way, by the time that we shifted, the containers got stuck for another 4 months in Jebel Ali port. And we had another dispute with this American export line. The company was called, and I had no choice unless to go to California, and over there we had to file a case against them into the court, and we had a lot of discussion. So finally, we came to a conclusion. On the way back to Afghanistan, I was stopped by the airport in Washington, D.C., in Dallas airport, by the FBI. And they have asked me that why, being a military contractor, you're sending the goods and commodities through Iran to Afghanistan. I told them that, so you know the Pakistan, as far as you know that I'm sending that one in support of the military operations in the country, and you know that one also that Pakistan way has been blocked. So show me another way that I have to send these containers. How I should do that one? With the containers on the way, in the middle of the way, got stuck. And they told me, okay, we call it as an exception, so do it, but don't tell anybody. Because there was no any other choice, you know? So unfortunately, we got stuck in a very significant location, a very challenging location that sometimes we have no choice unless to break the rules and do the trade and do business and investments. In order to find a long-term solution for this region, that what has to be done, I can see that the lack of joint regional integration policy and framework to facilitate a better connectivity and to create an efficient interdependency among these countries, there is no such an initiative so far, or if there is, that is minimal and that's not enough. So these countries, these 10 countries of the Central Asia and the Caucasus and Mongolia, and including Afghanistan, if we focus on the greater Caspian regions, more countries being added on the list. These countries, together themselves, they have a lot of potentials in order to trade in between each other instead of doing trade with out of the region. For example, if you look at the volume of trade and the graph of trade between these countries, except the trade volume between Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, which is a balanced model of trade, there is no balance in between any of these countries, and specifically in Afghanistan. For example, we don't have a balanced trade volume with Uzbekistan, with Turkmenistan, with Pakistan, with Iran, with Mongolia, with none of these countries. But such initiatives and such policies needs regional attention and regional integration in order to come to a joint collaborative policy to create and to promote interconnectivity and interdependency within the region. Another issue in terms of the trade and investments, for example, we could do a lot of trade, Afghanistan with these regional countries, with these neighbor countries, and they could do a lot of trade with Afghanistan as well. For example, we used to import $7.6 billion of goods and commodities every year from outside to Afghanistan. And most of these goods is not coming from these region countries. It's coming from China, it's coming from other regions of the world, but not a minimal is coming from this region, except oil and gas, which is coming a lot from Turkmenistan and Azerbaijan and from Uzbekistan, a little bit of that one. So countries in this region need to have bilateral free trade agreements and multilateral free trade agreements, which we don't have it. As well as in terms of boosting and promoting cross-border investments, we need, and these countries, Afghanistan with the neighboring countries and with the region, needs to have investment treaty agreement, bilateral and multilateral. This is needed. For example, taking a model of the ASEAN region, So such a model is needed in this region in order to boost the connectivity and to create interdependency between each other to do more trade and investment across borders. Although, if we see to the context of Afghanistan, we realize that there are so many challenges. We cannot say that, no, it's a piece of heaven and everybody can come and easily invest in Afghanistan. There are challenges over there. For example, insecurity is one of the major challenges, one of the major concerns. But at the same time, insecurity and war has created a lot of opportunities over there as well. For example, in the past 2 decades, there was a lot of multi-billion-dollar companies were in Afghanistan. They were supporting, they were bringing goods, and they were trading a lot of commodities into the country in terms of support of the government and support of the US military operations. So these were all opportunities, and still there are opportunities in order to do more trade in this region and to this country. But the significant and critical challenges which is avoiding doing of more trade and investment in this region, according to the World Bank report, Doing Business. One of them is access to finance. So in Afghanistan, access to finance is really a big challenge. There is no capital markets, there is no investment bonds, there is no green bonds in the country. We don't have sovereign wealth and sovereign funds from the government side to support the private sector in the country. We have a very low rate of FDI, at least for the past 5 years, is almost to 0. And there is no initiative from the international community, from the expertise of the international organizations like the World Bank, like the other institutions, in order to provide know-how and specific models of development for the government of Afghanistan. And the government of Afghanistan should be responsible to create facilities, for example, to introduce a pipeline of the projects on the infrastructure, on the transit, on the energy, on the power, and many more to attract investments. We, as an International Chamber of Commerce and Industries, we realize ourselves responsible to attract investments for the country. But what is needed from the government side and from the international community to facilitate that one, to create the context of that one, the legal frameworks, the policies and procedures which is needed in order to attract foreign direct investments, and specifically to the greenfield sectors. We don't have that one in order to introduce those for the foreign investors to come and invest in Afghanistan. And one of the opportunities for the region and for Afghanistan as well, as it was discussed before as well, the Belt and Road Initiative, that is a great opportunity in order to secure a little bit or a part of the inclusive financing for the infrastructure projects in the region. And we can realize the model of Kazakhstan, for example, that in the past few years, they could secure like around $14 billion through the BRI from China in terms of the connectivity projects and the railway development in Kazakhstan. So to come to a conclusion, I can say that the economic growth and sustainability, development and sustainability of Afghanistan is totally dependent on development of sustainable and inclusive regional infrastructure projects in the region, such as the railways, ports, customs houses, cross-border free economic zones and free trade zones, airports, energy pipelines like TAPI, electricity transmission like CASA 1000, and there was another new project today we got to know about TAP 500. That's another good initiative, and many more projects. So anytime that such projects would be existing and we would have inclusive and sufficient financing to finance these regional integrity and connectivity projects, we should be optimistic for a sustainable and for a long-term development into Afghanistan and into the region. And I can say personally, as a person who was born in Afghanistan, who lived in Afghanistan, that until the time that we don't have such projects and we don't have solutions for such regional connectivity projects, neither Afghanistan would be a safe place and neither the region would be safer and would not be experiencing development into the long run. But another challenge regarding the infrastructure project is the lack of financing. For example, in order to make these projects of interconnectivity and inter-regional connectivity to happen, we need a lot of financing. For example, to make these projects happen, there was a report by the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. They have studied and they have realized that to make such projects happen, the 10.5% of the total GDP of the region countries, the respective countries in this region, is needed in order to finance these projects. And if we consider the case of Afghanistan, it is almost 29% of the Afghanistan GDP is needed per annum in order to finance these projects. One of the initiatives which was taken in the past and still it's gone on, and that could be creating optimism for the regional integration, is the Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation, that they have initiated 6 corridor projects, 6 regional corridor projects. But still, lack of financing and lack of inclusive financing is a major challenge, that still the region and the countries, those 11 respective countries in the region, doesn't have that financing in order to complete those 6 interregional connectivity and interregional corridors. According to the estimates, there is a $76.8 billion per year is needed in order to complete those projects, which, considering the existing context of the region and Afghanistan, we can say that it's somehow impossible and not feasible. Do I have time? Can I continue a little bit more?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Now, I can say that now all Afghanistan infrastructure projects financing is coming from the public sector. Mr. Mastoor, Minister of Economy of Afghanistan, is here. Like, the infrastructure projects in Afghanistan is totally dependent on the ODI financing from the international community. Like 75% of the development project is being financed by the World Bank, by the IFC, and by other international institutions, with a limited or with a minimal private sector intervention even to these infrastructure projects. Apart from, there's no lack of foreign direct investments for these projects. So no private sector participation and no FDI, and the reason is due to lack of efficient legal frameworks and interesting policies on the ground by the government of Afghanistan and by the region countries. One of the good initiatives of the government in terms of facilitating the private sector financing for such projects was the public-private partnership, that the law has been passed, and one of the projects, or I believe 2 of the projects, has already been granted for a 20 to 30 years concession with the IFC financing and the World Bank mega insurance. One of them is this gas project of Shiberghan, which has been given to one of the private institutions, and IFC is the partner for that one. That's a very good initiative. And still, we have a lot of such opportunities in terms of the infrastructure projects, transit, roads, railways, airports, customs border, free economic zones, free trade zones, that we have initiated a proposal and we have given that one to the government of Afghanistan in order to pass the law to create the independent regulatory framework and independent agency of, in order to manage the free trade zones and free economic zones in Afghanistan. All of these projects need financing, and private sector, both from Afghanistan and from outside, could be one of the potentials in order to be interested for those projects. But it needs proper legal frameworks and proper policies from the government side, with a guarantee from the international institutions like the mega branch of the World Bank. Despite of all these issues, challenges, and opportunities, the Afghan private sector were always had their own initiatives in order to promote trade and investment into Afghanistan and into the region as well. And I would like to name just a few of those initiatives which was taken by the Afghan private sector solely, with a minimal support from the government or no support. Establishment and bringing the International Chamber of Commerce in Afghanistan, which I mentioned in the previous panel also, and for the last 4 years, we have been working shoulder to shoulder with the private sector, with the government, and with the international institutions. And we have given a lot of input in terms of the policy reforms to the government. And for example, one of those significant matter which we were totally involved was the recent mining law which has been passed by the Parliament of Afghanistan. So we got the draft from the government, and then ICC has reviewed the entire content of the law, and we have provided our comments to be revised in order to make it applicable once it's being passed from the Parliament of Afghanistan. And same is the case to the other regulatory frameworks and the policies from the government. WTC, the World Trade Center, has recently been, the license has been issued for Afghanistan. So fortunately, myself and my colleagues, we had this initiative and we got the license, and soon, within the next few months, we will be having the World Trade Center to be operating in Afghanistan, which is creating another opportunity for Afghanistan and to promote trade and investments into the country and to the region. We have evidence of so many joint chambers of Afghanistan with the regional countries and with the other countries in the world, which has been created and initiated solely by the private sector, and as well as the foreign country, Afghanistan business councils, which has been established in other regions of the world and in other countries of the world as well. If we focus on industry and manufacturing, the manufacturing and industrial activities and practices has been increased, and there was a sufficient level of support from the government, which was appreciated by the private sector. And one of those support from the government was the government tariff policies, which was effective in order for the local products to be competitive for the importing products. But still, the regional countries like Iran, Pakistan, and other countries, it's a free market and free competition. They have applied some dumping practices and dumping policies, which has put somehow challenges for the infant industry of Afghanistan. But still, this sector was very successful and so far doing very well. Once again, thank you so much for the attention, for the longest speak which I had, and I would love to get any questions if there would be any. Thank you.
After the last speaker. Thank you, Ms. Ziarmal, for this exciting speech. And now we're inviting Mr. Abdullah Khenjani to do his traditional short speech, closing the session.
Sure.
Please.
Could you please tell me how many minutes I got, because I would like to limit myself to
5 to 7, please.
That's absolutely fine. That's absolute, because I gave my time already to. No, that's fine. So let me start very quickly, joining everyone for thanking you, Mr. Murat, for such a delicious lunch. And of course, it's not fair to position me every time between lunch and tea break with the audience. I will not let you to do that in the future, but I don't know what to do. So let me give a personal experience and create a foundation for what I would like to say beyond this technical economic analysis that has been represented by everybody here. I'm not sure whether I could add more technical discussions and values to what has been said yet. So it was 2 years ago, I was in London. There was a tragic incident against the journalist. ISIS attacked 12 journalists in Afghanistan. And sadly, I was leading a TV station at that time, and 2 of my colleagues were killed on that attack. And I was forced to right away leave London and make my trip plan, and I couldn't find ticket from Heathrow Airport, so I went to a smaller one to go quickly, to leave quickly United Kingdom, City London airport. So I was crying because one of those victims were not only my colleague but also my cousin. And on the airport, while I was leaving the gate, there was 2 guys from intelligence services, and they stopped me and they asked me why I'm crying. I told them that there was a tragic incident in Afghanistan, and that's why I lost 2 of my colleagues, and they were in my newsroom. And then they misunderstood me with a teenager in London because of the grievances, leaving London and going to Istanbul and then joining ISIS through Syria. So they stopped me for 1.5 hours. I was about to miss my flight until they verified my story and my identity. And then I was yelling, I was crying, I was telling to them that for God's sake, I need to be as soon as possible in Kabul, but they were doing just their own job. There was a personal story that could give us a good example of the understanding from Afghanistan reality in the region and beyond. I would like to mention 4 key points that are so critical for the future cooperation among the countries in the region. First of all, the fair game in our region. I think the knowledge and the understanding in our region is an intelligence-centric understanding from the realities, from the social and economic realities on the ground. And that's why when it comes to specifically from Afghanistan, and if you are an Afghan, then you are automatically subject to any suspicions which exist in the world. Regardless of how honest and how noble you are, nobody is judging you based on that. Just judging you based on what terrorists are doing. And this intelligence-centric understanding from Afghanistan, I think, has taken a lot of opportunities from the business community too in Afghanistan, and from the people coming to Afghanistan. So just closing to that first point, as mentioned by many people here, there has been in past 18 years in Afghanistan, big companies, they had made billions of dollars from Afghanistan, despite these security challenges, these legal challenges, corruption and all these things. And we really hope that this misconception, which is full of conspiracy theories, could be solved as soon as possible within the countries in the region. And this kind of stereotyping each other should be stopped as soon as possible. The second thing, of course, Afghanistan is one of the dangerous country and insecure country, but there is also a high margin of profit in Afghanistan for the companies who are coming. I was just told yesterday, if Mr. Rezayee will allow me, Mr. Rezayee has got a compound which he accommodates some of the UN bodies in Afghanistan, and just only for the security cost of that, he is paying few millions dollars per year for a security to a British company that is securing that compound in Kabul. It means that the margin of the profit in Afghanistan is so high, and nobody is talking about it at all. And of course, we don't want Warren Buffett to come to Afghanistan and he himself do some businesses, but he can send someone else there to do his business, or someone else from the region. And I think this high risk should be also somehow calculated based on the high margin of profit in Afghanistan. The third point that I think we are suffering so much as a country, that's looking Afghanistan's from or within a US presence military in Afghanistan. And we are missing the context of looking from the countries in the region beyond US military in Afghanistan. I mean, United States is almost in a 2 to the 3rd part of the world. In Germany, they are, I mean, in Saudi Arabia, they're in Qatar, they're in Turkey, they're, I don't know, many other countries. Nobody is treating the way other countries that they are treating Afghanistan. And the level of conspiracy against the US presence in Afghanistan is totally different from the countries in the region and beyond. Even sometimes I do feel this sense that we are going to a goodwill to the, I don't know, China, to Russia, to some other countries. They are not ready to accept us as an independent country. I'm so sorry to express this frustration, but they're just looking from a US presence perspective and glasses Afghanistan. And I hope that this could change in the future, because that would take a lot of opportunities from us. My last point will be, of course, Afghanistan itself is in a small market, and we cannot, I mean, if we would value Afghanistan based on its specific capacities and potentials, that wouldn't be a peanuts in the biggest economic potential of the world. But Afghanistan has got a big the potential for connectivity and for connecting the region. As has been mentioned by many people here, Afghanistan could be a land bridge for everybody. And this, one of the key causes for less development in the region is that we haven't combined we haven't included all the countries in the region. We just try to treat especially and differently each individual country, and that's why we haven't reached to a foundation for a sustainable development in the region. Having said all this, I think despite all these challenges, still there are a lot of companies in Afghanistan. I mean, a lot of Turkish companies I know, Indian companies are there, I mean, Germans are there, a few other companies are there. They're doing great businesses, and we have good businessmen in Afghanistan. Of course, the US presence in 17 years has made some of the people super rich, and I think there are opportunities for partnership, collaboration, and all these things, and I hope that this platform could also be used to make some, at least, conversation over some potential partnership in the future between the business people who we have, Mr. Rezayee and Engineer Saib Basharmal here, to be Ziarmal, sorry. Thank you so much, and that was all from me. I think that was, I hope that would be in 7 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're moving to questions.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Saida Ahmed. I actually work in education and economic development in the UK. And I think one of the things that I realized from this panel is that there's phenomenal opportunities and challenges facing Afghanistan, but something that hasn't been discussed in the panel at all, but is absolutely vital, is that Afghanistan isn't just about a regional connectivity, it's about the people. And unless you're talking about investment in the people, in the skills, in the economic prosperity of Afghans, you will struggle to find peace and prosperity that will be long-term. So an important question for me is what is being done, not just through the aid agencies, because they have their own interests and agenda, what is being done through the government to ensure that those railways, roads and logistics industries have a vital part for the local people in Afghanistan, including women and youth. Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for this important point. At least, as I said in the beginning, please bear with us because of this. So far, the theme for the last two sessions was very specific. But I'm sure that in the next sessions, including Sustainable Development Goals, where we are talking about really investing on people, and particularly youth and women that you mentioned, they are there. However, at least in one case, I'm not fully in agreement with you that all what donors are supporting, it is for their own, interests. But in any case, if your questions are specific, we can come to that one. But since 2002 until now, really the Afghan society changed a lot. At least what you see in this panel, almost all of us, we've born in Afghanistan, we educated in Afghanistan, and we are working in Afghanistan. At least me, it's 17 years that I'm non-stop in the government. So it's all what we got from many of our partners. But if your questions are specific, or if any specific questions you have during tea breaks or in later sessions, definitely we will be here at your service.
Thank you very much for the. I just want just give a little bit explanation about the society in Afghanistan. The people's changed a lot since 2001 till now. We can say 100% in everything, education and human rights. We have a lot of changes. I completely agree with the minister that a lot of investment happened on the human generation. Now Afghanistan, you can count that the security forces is carrying a lot of only the country responsibility and fighting against the Taliban and the terrorist groups. The young generation is day by day is producing in the country and taking the responsibility of the future of the country. Women right is much changes, and women are now. If you see the parliament, we have a lot of women, and even the young girls came into the parliament, into the chair. They got voted. They voted by the peoples. Still, we are facing conflict, we're facing war, we're facing problems, but we have hope. That's why we're not letting the country to fall down, and we're moving forward. Hopefully, we will get there, inshallah. Thank you.
Actually, I can proudly say that one of the significant achievements that Afghanistan had for the last 2 decades was about the human capacity building in the country, as Minister Mastoor said. So we're all part of this war generation, that we were born in the war, and since we got young, we were in the war, and then at least for the last 2 decades, that we started everything from the scratch and from the zero. And apart from that one, the private sector also has contributed a lot in terms of the human capacity building into the country. As myself, for example, back in 2008, I had an initiative of establishing the first private institute in Kabul. It was an institute of business and management. Then we established a school, then we established university. And until now, there is totally 56 private universities which has been established by the contribution of the private sector all around the country, and this is all adding to that human capacity, which is, I said, is one of the biggest achievements for Afghanistan for the last 2 decades. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, last question, please.
Just concerned citizen for you guys. Private sector, I think you're in the right direction. Amazing. And if you have the private sector create opportunity for other company like my company or some other company, investment opportunity to come, so will come. Just create it and will come. Don't wait for the government to do it. The government takes them a long time and restriction. And be so. Also be part of all the organization around the world, travel, real estate. Have your business people be part of this, create local events and exposition in your country, invite people to come to visit, open the door, it will create major opportunity. Regarding the transportation, open the industry to investment, to other investment, foreign investment. They will come, slowly. They will trust you more and more. And this is what my suggestion.
Thank you so much for a very good comment. Actually, we consider bringing foreign companies into Afghanistan to invest and to convince them to come into Afghanistan and to provide them the real picture of Afghanistan. So unfortunately, that picture of Afghanistan that the people's looking and watching from the face of the media and from the face of the social media, that is totally a false picture of my country. And I personally, as an Afghan, as a person, I don't agree with that face of the country which is being shown for the world. Still, Afghanistan is a land of opportunities, and we in the International Chamber of Commerce and also as a entrepreneur, I'm always proud to represent the real picture of my country to the world, and also to convince the foreign investors in order to come and invest in Afghanistan into multiple potential sectors that opportunities there, like the mines, minerals, agribusiness, transport, logistics, human capacity building, universities, private institutions. These are all the grounds, these are all the opportunities, power, energy, services, which is one of the major sectors into the country. We keep doing that one, and we would be very happy in order to help you and any other investors who are looking forward to come in Afghanistan and invest over there. Thank you.
Last question.
You have to forgive me, I didn't mean to be here. I was walking by and I walked in by accident because I thought this session is interesting. And I heard something that completely shocked me and staggered me. I'm a documentary maker. I made one of the first documentaries in Afghanistan in 2001 when the bombs were still falling about refugees. And what staggers me is that the country that's responsible for the invasion of Afghanistan and creating the mess and the havoc, Britain with the US and what they did in Iraq, that country, their security companies are making millions of dollars out of keeping somebody's compound safe. The absurdity of that just shocks me. I mean, the very people who made the mess are now making money out of it. And I want to echo what this lady said. As long as we don't care about the people there and we're just simply using Afghanistan as a place to make money, we are screwed. I just came in to say that. Sorry. I'm going to go back and get a coffee now.
I will encourage you to stay for the next session as well. Because that is on peace. And these things comes there too. So you enjoy your coffee and then be with us.
No, actually, no, in 5 minutes we are starting the session. That's why no coffee, no tea now. Everybody will be served with water straight there. And just one short question from the gentleman.
Hello, my name is Mustafa. I'm from Azerbaijan, Caspian Container Company. So I know this is true or no. Is it the project of Afghanistan on opening and joint venture with one of the Caspian countries on production of container vessels in the Caspian Sea, or no? Why I am asking it? Because we are working in Caspian region and its project is very interesting for us. And we also would like to join it if it's okay.
We would love to take your project and we will see that, for example, who is interesting in order to consider that project as an opportunity to invest on that one. I can say one thing, that Afghans have invested a lot in all around the world. So it doesn't mean that all Afghans, whatever money they made for the last 2 decades or before that one, they have invested back to the country, because there's a saying that don't put all your eggs in one basket. So this is always being considered by the Afghan investors. So therefore, they have invested part of their investment into the country, but still, I can see a lot of investors, including our company, for example, that we invested in multiple sectors, not only in Afghanistan, but in other regions in Middle East, in Turkey, in Central Asia, in Uzbekistan, and other countries as well. So we would love to have your project, and through the proper channels, we can take it for the review and consideration of the private investors. Thank you.
Thank you very much.